What's going on, guys? Alright, so in today's session we're going to be looking at the basics of Adobe Illustrator and how we can use it to, well, I'll show you guys some of the tools that will help you to create a logo. Alright, so just open up Adobe Illustrator now. I'm just going to create a document. I'm just going to go to print is fine, A4, and create. So what that's going to do now is give us a nice blank page. So what do we have here? We've got our tool palette. So on the left hand side we have our tools, similar to what we have in Photoshop. You can double it up so you've got the side by side, or you can have it individually just by clicking on the double chevron. We've got our selection tool, our direct selection tool, magic wand, lasso tool, pen tool, the curative tool. Now if you guys look and you hover your cursor over any of the tools, it'll tell you exactly what they are. So some tools are going to have the same name that they do in Photoshop, but they do act slightly differently in Illustrator. Reason being is because Photoshop is a raster based program, which means that it uses small squares of information called pixels, colored squares, to create their image, whereas in Illustrator is a vector based program which uses a mathematical equation to work out the distance between 2 points, which in essence, in layman's terms, means that you can zoom all the way in and you won't get that really ugly squarey pixelation that you might get with a raster file. So you might think, well, that's good, you should use that for everything. No, Illustrator has very specific things that it's used for. So particularly as graphic designers, you'll use it for logo design. So I'm going to show you some of the tools in Illustrator that you can use to help you create a logo. Okay. Alright, so let's start off by grabbing some of the basics. So similarly to Photoshop, we have layers, a layer palette, and that works in exactly the same way. Whatever's at the top of the layer stack is closer to the front, and anything that is lower is pushed to the back. One of the key tools, let's get rid of this because we're going to bring that up later. Let's create a interesting shape. So if we click and hold down the mouse button, then we have various shapes. We have the rectangle tool, rounded rectangle tool, the ellipse tool, the polygon tool, star tool, and the flare tool. Let's start off with the rectangle tool. Now in Illustrator we have the option of changing the stroke, which is the outline, and the fill color. Let's go ahead and draw a green square with a black outline. So our stroke is set to black. If we want to change that, we can just click onto it, double click, and then we get our color palette pop up. We can decide on what color we want that to be. We're going to leave it as black, okay, and then we're going to change the fill color. So the color that fills it, we're going to change that to this pinky color. It's nice. They see it went a bit duller because we're using CMYK. Don't worry about that. So let's draw hold down shift key, draw a square. And as you guys can see, let's zoom in slightly. As you guys can see in Illustrator, we have we have our normal anchor points which go around the edges. We also have these circles at each corner point, and what that allows us to do is if we click and hold the mouse button and then we drag our slider towards the center, that allows us to round off that rectangle, so it gives us a softer edge. This is just a nice quick option. We're going to go to the polygon tool. So rounded rectangle tool will give us a rounded rectangle, the ellipse tool will give us an ellipse, hold down shift to get a circle, and our polygon tool, if we double click, then that will allow us to select the amount of sides that we want. So it's set to 6 right now, which will give us a hexagon. We're going to go to 3 so that we've got a triangle. We could then again, we could also round off that triangle with using the same technique that we done for our square, and we can readjust the size. Remember, hold down the shift key if we want to keep it in proportion. So now we've got a nice rounded triangle and a rounded square. But what if we wanted to make this into a single shape? Well, we could just drag and click, right click, and then group them together. So now they'll be together, so they group together, but they're not actually one shape. see because we've still got the outline of the triangle and the outline of the square. So let's right click, let's ungroup that. What we can do is we can merge those two shapes together to give us a custom shape, which is a irregular shape. If we go up to Window, scroll down to Pathfinder, then we get this pop-up menu, and this allows us to do various things which can be particularly useful when creating logo designs. We've got some shape modes. We've got the unite, we've got the minus front, we've got the divide, we've got the trim, we've got the merge. We're going to select, with both of our objects selected, we're going to go to unite, which does what it says in the tin, it unites them. Alright, so now we have one shape. As you can see, we've lost the remainder of the triangle shape, which is all good. Alright, so if we wanted to create a custom shape, then it's easy enough to do so just by using the shape tool and by using the merge. But what other options do we have with this? Say if we undo those, let's just duplicate that. So now we've got two of them. We're going to reunite those. So select both, unite, But what if we wanted to cut this section out? Well, we can do that using the same Pathfinder tool. If we right click, let's group them together. We then go down to divide and click. If we click off of our object, we can see there's a difference has been made. We can now see the outline of the square, which we couldn't previously see. If we go to our direct selection tool, which allows us to select it directly, and if we hover over the different sections, we can see that it's been divided into various sections. Let's click on the section that we want to get rid of. So we've just clicked on it, left click. We can see it's selected by the blue outline. We can hit backspace or delete, and now we have another interesting shape with a cool cutout. So this can be used to make quite a dynamic looking graphic, but in a very simple fashion. So we can see it is transparency, we can still see things through it, which is pretty nice. Alright, so two particularly useful tools when creating your logo designs. The next tool that we're going to look at is the type tool. Now the type tool pretty much does what it says in the tin. You click, you can type, and we've got our typography, which is good. But in Illustrator we have other options. We've got the area type tool, which is newer to the later versions of Illustrator. We've got the type on path tool, the vertical type tool, which allows us to type straight down, the vertical area type tool, which is the vertical variation of the area type tool, the vertical type on path tool, and the touch type tool. So we're going to go to the type on path tool. We're going to go to our brush. We're going to create a path, a very squiggly path, but that's fine. We're going to go to our type on path tool, and we're going to click onto that path, and as we can see, our type follows the path that we've just created. So if we were to copy and paste that, and as you see, it follows the path that we have created. Alright, so again, particularly useful, but when working with typography, please keep in mind legibility, so the ability for the person looking at it to be able to actually read what it is that you want to say. Okay, it's the type on path tool. Another particularly interesting tool, which is the last tool that I'm going to show you guys as this kind of introduction, is the blend tool. Right, and the blend tool allows us to create a blend between two elements. So for example, if we've got a line here, so the shift key, get that perfect. Let's put a stroke on that line. Let's duplicate that. And let's place the other side here. Select our blend tool. If we click on the first part of where we want to blend, and then we get a little plus symbol, so we can see that it's going to complete that blend by clicking on. Then that gives us a fill between. Now, what we can see here is that our blend is set to smooth color, right? So because we've gone from black to black, then it blends from black to black. If we wanted to see that in how that would work with, let's say, blending from one color to the next, let's create these, duplicate that line again. We are making our next selection. We're going to change the color of this line now. So let's change it from yellow, I was going to say green, wow, to red. Hit our blend tool, got a selection for our first, so we get a little star, so we can see how we get that blend, because we get that nice gradient fill from one to the next. Now, okay, that's cool, but what else can we do with it? If we hold down, let's create another 2 lines, and we're going to line those up also. Now if we double click onto the blend tool itself, then from between spacing, if we click on the little drop down menu, we can go to specified steps. We can select the amount of steps that we have in between from one point to the next. We're going to change that to 10 just for the sake of it. We're going to hit OK. We're going to hit on our first section of the blend, and we're going to hit plus. So now, as you can see, is we have steps. We have 10 steps from one point to the next. We still have the blend. If you guys want to move it or readjust it, then you have to make sure that you click on to the first or the final path that you've created. And again, this can be very useful for creating illustrations, or it can be useful for logo design. Okay, so the shape tool, the pathfinder options with the merge and the divide, the blend tool, the type tool, type on path tool, all very useful weapons in your arsenal as a designer, particularly for the creation of logos. So experiment with them.